Hello, and welcome to this session. It's one of the last sessions on the Learning Planet, and whoever watches this, I hope you will like it. This is also the last presentation in the track organized within this festival by Kuzhok Movement, Global Education Futures, and some other partners around the topic we call Protopia. And now we are finally going to reveal what Protopia is. And the idea of the session now is to present some reports and results of the work of communities within Russia and internationally that are trying to understand what the key trends of the future are and what we can do about it going forward in the next few years. Since we call this session the 2020 is a decisive decade, we want to talk why we think it is decisive, why it's so important in the possible future history of humankind, when we hopefully will look back at it from 2050 or 2100, we will say, yes, indeed, some important decisions were made back then. Can we hope for it? What can happen in the few coming years that will probably get us on a very inspiring pathway to our flourishing, or some say thriving, futures? So to get there, we certainly need to work hard and play hard. So let me begin by maybe explaining what is the idea behind this. So I'm Pavел Lukša. I'm the founder of Global Education Futures, and also I am one of the founders of the method called Rapid Foresight that has been used in Russia and over 20 countries of the world to map out possible futures. But in Russia, together with my colleagues that will present today, we applied it across a very wide range of challenges and issues. So the Rapid Foresight methodology is an approach of open foresight. It's a visioning tool that helps understand what the future will be by engaging communities of change makers, of decision makers to talk about the future. So in fact, most foresight of future exploration methods are more like analytical. They require special agencies, they require consultants, professional futurologists to explore the future and then publish reports around this. In our approach, we think it's that future has to be owned by everyone, and that all
Pavel,
help us as a community to set up collective goals, collective vision. And since the design of this method, we started to apply and in Russia, each of these projects turned out to be really catalytic. It really mobilized communities of change makers, literally thousands of yeah, I can switch my video off so that probably my voice would be heard better. So it really helped bring together lots of people that are designers of technologies in education, that are leaders or administrators of educational institutions and so on, into dialogue and into practical dialogue that led to policy making, to changes implemented, and building on top of that, we started to engage ourselves and other leaders around the topic, first of all, of human development, but also other sectors such as urban development, growth of private entrepreneurial projects, technological entrepreneurship. In community-driven large gatherings, which were organized as cruise ships. They were really literally ships that would go on the river, and it will be a sort of comfortable isolation space where people would work for 5, 6, 7 days together to create maps of the future. And so this turned out to be hundreds of people going on these trips and actually producing amazing insights that catalyzed literally hundreds of projects in all sectors of national economy. And really, it turned out to be like one of the largest future labs, live future labs in the world that we were creating. And building up on top of this, we started to pull together communities of change makers, communities of innovators that were inspired to work not only in education, but beyond it, in technologies, in creating alliances around regional developments, and so on. So by the end of the decade, like looking back at what we were doing from 2010 to 2020, we can say that in Russia and also internationally, a number of very strong alliances and networks grew that approach future not as something given, not as something that we have to look upon, not as something that we can probably take where we can take a certain trend and just exploit it, but really where we can purposefully create whole ecosystems, whole sectors of human activities. And later Anastasiya Morozova is going to speak about National Technological Initiative, which is based exactly on this premise. So we think that somehow in Russia, maybe because we are not, let's say, we are maybe not the strongest country from the institutional standpoint. We don't have so much, let's say, institutional legacy. We have so much opportunity for creating new approaches and new solutions. And so there was a possibility for a community that consists of tens of thousands of people to work together and start creating, let's say, elements of the future we want to see. I know that Russia is not without problems. We have a lot of problems, but it's also a lot of inspiring things that do happen in these communities. And somehow, of course, the image of Russia is that it's a very kind of backward-looking country, but we do have these very advanced innovators that are doing world-class projects across the country. And we see that if we want to move forward, we need to, first of all, build up on the power of communities. So communities matter. If there is one thing we can learn about creating the future, it starts with communities that connect with each other. So Nik Gрэхэм here in this panel is also the co-founder of a weaving lab. It's an approach in creating communities and networks of communities. So it is absolutely essential if we want to create the future we want to see. Communities with vision are intentional communities that can work together to make things happen. So vision is absolutely necessary. That's why we think methodologies such as Rapid Foresight are so helpful. But also, what it matters is consistent implementation. We can have all kinds of nice groups having nice dreams, but it's so much more important to actually have things done. And sometimes what prevents us from doing things is this idea of perfection, that we just want to do them so good that we are afraid to step out into the world and do them. So the prototyping the future we want to see is really essential. We don't need to wait for perfect conditions to make the change. We need to really start trying out and seeing what happens. And always when we try out, we face institutions and players. So any action that will try to shape the future will have to deal with necessities of existing players and their demands. We always, when we want to create something new, we have to deal with those demands and find the ways between these, let's say, necessary conditions into whatever is possible. Find these and shape these pockets of possibilities. And one of the ways to shape the pockets of possibilities is actually to create what we can call symbolic actions. So an example of Foresight Fleet, the idea of going somewhere on a ship, creating that trip is as a beautiful, let's say, symbol of going into the future, is just one of many things that we were doing and find really inspiring to do. So for example, Екатерина Лошкарева, who will share later, she's one of the leaders of WorldSkills movement, and Екатерina was one of the people responsible for a large Olympic-like gathering in Kazan a year ago. And of course, we can say, okay, it's a competition of people that come from many countries to compete and understand skills. Does this have an immediate implication on economy or society? Not necessarily, but the fact that it creates this symbolic action, it sort of becomes an anchor to which many people get attached, and that has very long-term implications. So even if there is no immediate implication, the long-term important. So we have to find them, we have to create them and be creative around them. And over time, by leveraging all these things, we learn how to become an ecosystem, which means is that we not only do our individual change-making efforts, we learn how to complement and support each other in doing these things. So, and of course, any ecosystem of this kind will also be a learning ecosystem. So we are learning for ourselves to be change makers. So this is the approach that we are taking. We are not waiting for future to be happen. In one of the panels in our session here, in our stream here, was on the future we desire and deserve. And actually, it's really important to understand what we think is likely to happen, because our anticipation of the future actually makes the future happen. And because we can, and because of that, we can also explore and try to go for a deeper exploration of what constrains us to have the future we desire. What inside of us is afraid of the future we desire. What inside of us sabotages the future we desire, and how we can actually learn to become the future we desire. Because essentially, if we think about the approaches that can bring about the future we want to see in the world, they should be building on the power of people who are making this future happen. So the idea that expresses this is the idea of Protopia. The Protopia means desirable and achievable scenarios of the future. Is something that is opposed to utopian vision, something that's idealistic but never achievable, or dystopian, something very unwanted, but also not telling us where to go. It's just not tells us where not to go, like machines rising and killing all humans, or all kinds of tyrants rising and suppressing all humans. It's an unwanted future, but it doesn't tell us how not to get there. And myopia is another way, a strategy, which is just to focus on short-term priorities without looking into the future. Is also not really a proactive interaction with possible development. And of course, anything that relates to long-term implications of our actions, like, for example, consequences for ecology or impact of education on the next generation, requires long-term thinking. So Protopian approach does have that, and it's essentially very educational in its essence, is because it says we are prototyping the future, we are amplifying what we think are like seeds of this future. The prototypes we are creating, they have to be holistic ways of being rather than isolated solutions to problems. And because we are going to be in that future as well, we need to learn how to become systems we want to see. So this is very important, because if we try to get to the future by designing it for others, we will never get the future that we think is appropriate, because we are part of that system or that is emerging. And if in our action, if for example, if we want to have a future that is free and just, but created by taking unfair actions and suppressing everyone, like as it was happening maybe 100 years ago in our country, in Russia, that already shows that the future we desire is not going to happen, because we are not using the process that will bring us there. We're not embodying the future that will bring us there. So it's really essential in the Protopian approach to find ways to prototype the future we want to see and amplify it. And so the beginning of 2020s invites us to do exactly that. It invites us to step into this process of change making actively, because first of all, we for the very long time, maybe the first time in many years, humanity had the chance to stand still and reflect, to be on this long pause, to think about the foundations of our civilization, to see that some of our actions are creating unwanted consequences, and to reflect on that and to change its ways. It's a big question whether that reflection was done properly. If it's an open question whether we are kind of going out of the pandemics without proper learning, but our suspicion is actually that the learning was going on and is still going on. And also the big learning that is happening is that we are in the moment when one of the average probability global risks has shown its face. So we faced a relatively mild pandemic risk that was mapped by risk mapping agencies such as World Economic Forum. And really, when they are talking about more systemic risks, they are talking about environmental risks, they are talking about biodiversity loss, climate risk, and so on. And there are major risks that we have to address. So this is a big awakening for decision makers. They have to deal with these risks. And another thing is that COVID served as a kind of accelerator. And I think my colleague Nik is going to later talk about this. An accelerator of digital transformation, of technological transformation, but also as a transformation that started to amplify contradictions in what is happening in our society. And kind of we see the contradiction between US and China rising, the contradiction between, let's say, what is happening within US, for example, Trumpists and Democrats, all of it calling for some kind of reboot, something that we need to move on. And that invited us to look at a number of these challenges from the forward-looking perspective, applying again the community wisdom, our Rapid Foresight methodology to understand what the future of humanity is going to be in the next decade. And we did a number of projects, all of them will be presented today, including the one that I wanted to speak about, the 2020s Foresight. It's a mapping of key events that can happen in the next decade, taken out of approximately 50 leading futurists forecasting the future for 2020s, and integrating our own researches on transformation of economy, geopolitics, and culture and society. So we created a map that has about 200 different events. And just to give you some insights, which I think will have implications for the future of us, people who want to deal with the changes in education, in skills, in technologies, we have to recognize that some things are systemically changing and new paradigms are going to emerge. So first thing that a lot of people started to recognize that we are at the end of maybe a century-old cycle of globalization that was centered around, let's say, very specific players. Most of them are Western players, like the US, previously European countries. New players are emerging, and it's not only China, which is the usual suspect, but a number of other players, and they are looking for a possibility of regional alliances, and maybe not only regional, but also other types of alliances built on certain intentions, and all of them trying to address 21st century challenges in their specific way. For example, challenges of creating sustainable and more just society. And the other thing that is going to happen throughout this decade, there are a lot of evidences for that, is the end of this old mass market consumerist capitalism that was the main driver of development in the 20th century. We are moving to a new paradigm of economy. Again, there will be more discussion around this. And that creates a lot of opportunities for people who want to work in creating these new sectors, including a massive reconstruction of cities for a sustainable and just life, and also the relationship between humans and planets is largely manifested in how we organize our food systems. So agriculture is going to be a big sector of innovation. It's not only the past of humanity, it's also the future of humanity. Finally, a big thing is about how world politics landscape is going to change, because of course in 2020 we saw all kinds of protests that indicated that people are dissatisfied with existing paradigm. They require a new paradigm that will be will have more social, racial, economic, environmental justice, and will require a new generation of policymakers. And so this means that, let's say, this baby boomer, wild male politics is going away, just because it's generational. The old generation of politicians, even Joe Biden, they're 75 plus years old, and they're unfortunately or fortunately will not be able to withstand the challenges that we are facing. We require younger people to step into this role, and it's starting to happen. Which means that the cultural reboot will come with this. And when we looked at all these events and tried to understand them, how they're going to affect the world, we realized that we are really standing at the crossroads, that a lot of these events are playing into, let's say, really negative scenarios for the society, for the global society, some of them playing into positive ones. And really, we are talking about these four quadrants, four possible spheres where such... Меня слышите, извините? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so just to double check, because I don't see anyone. Sorry, I'm finishing already. Just a few more statements, two more statements. So first one is that we see that there are actually, at the same time, right now in 2020 and 2021, we see a possibility for moving into very negative scenarios, like polarization and political suppression, institutional collapse and conflicts, like a spiraling negative spiral that will start destroying the world we want to see without even, let's say, a clear way out of it. Some of these spirals were happening in the beginning of 20th century when countries quickly spiraled into dynamics of the First World War. But on the other hand, if we find ways into, let's say, establishing new paradigms of new economy, new society, then a possibility of a totally new societal development emerge. But of course, they don't come automatically. So really, what is happening is right now with COVID, we see that countries are going more likely, countries, regions, organizations are more likely going to this stage of isolation, self-reliance, and we really see the surge of what we can call new left-wing nationalism attitude around the world. which unfortunately will get us into that next zone. The conflicts are almost inevitable ahead of us, and we already see these conflicts happening between US and China, and all kinds of debates happening around Europe, and the future of Europe is not secured, certainly, and many more evidences in all regions of the world, which means that we can stay in that zone, or we can try to find, let's say, these intentional alliances that cannot take the whole world together, but they can take parts of it in the quest for more meaningful future. And this is actually, the faster we get to that zone of creating those alliances, the better for transition to a new paradigm. So the invitation to all of us, actually, and I will finish here, we believe that it's not possible to go through the kind of cleansing crisis that is actually we are not in the final stages of it. We're still in the process of it. And in order to pass it, we need to learn, we need to establish new institutions, we need to develop new technologies, we need to many things. So my colleagues today will share some of the ideas in different sectors, including human learning, including technologies and so on, that will help us get there. But we will not get immediately. It will take a transition time. And that transition time, we should focus on building up alliances, learning how to work together, abandon the ideas that some of us are like cast outs, like, for example, Russia used to be outcast in some regards in the world politics for many years. It doesn't have to be, and there are very healthy groups in Russia that can work together with international colleagues to build up this new world. And as well, we don't have to rely on these 20th century prejudices to move forward. So let's find opportunities for collaboration, and let's find them in the spirit of the future that calls all of us. Thank you very much, and I want to pass the word to Anastasia, I guess, right? No, to you?
Which one?
To Anastasia Starostинskая? No, not to you. I think the idea was that we were maybe if you guys have any comments to what I said, I welcome. But we actually wanted to, after that, to have Nik Gрэхэм present the report on future skills.
Okay. So at the beginning, I thought that I would be at the end. But I can
yes,
do.
Yeah, you are at the end actually. So I just saw a message saying, but there was a problem with Zoom, I guess, that says please pass to me. But that was just a problem of Zoom writing something.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Got confused.
So feel free, go as you feel it.
No, I think Nik, we welcome you to continue. Take on from me. And sure, share the results of future skills research together with Kate.
Definitely, I would be delighted to do that. But I did just want to touch on that last image that you showed with the 4 quadrants. And just a clarifying question, the top corner, there was left wing, but I think that might be right wing, as in the kind of Donald Trump type ideology. Is that correct?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, not exactly, because what we see is that it's not the Donald Trump type of nationalism. It's actually the opposite. It's actually where we think the US will move now, for example. With kind of the idea to mend Trump's situation. Why? Because people demand more social security, because they demand solutions that will help them live through the crisis. And actually the left wing in that regard is this human, but it's still pretty much focused on. I'm sorry.
I think you got to kill your video, because that makes a big difference. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. So what I was saying, that this left wing is exactly the, let's say, the the Democrat left wing, the idea of giving more to people, but in a more nationalist oriented, self-reliance, country focused rather than globally focused. This is where actually we are moving because of COVID right now. Nations demand this type of politics, but as a matter of fact, that starts to lead to kind of this next stage, which I was talking about very often and most likely. This is still an anticipated future. It's a possible scenario, very likely to happen in this sequence, but probably we can find ways to evade it and jump straight forward into this new paradigm building, hopefully.
Right, and that's the question that I was most interested in, is what are the pathways between these different future scenarios, or actually present scenarios as well. And I'm wondering about, I'm not a historian, but the rise and fall of different civilizations in the past. I would love to get into the details of this, and I wonder how much these futurologists are informed by what's happened in the past, or do we need to come up with a completely new playbook in order to get to the ideal protopia desired, the new paradigm of global development, green post-capitalism, whatever. So yeah, are there pathways?
Well, they are absolutely possible, and I think that actually, first of all, we are not a world government, so to say, to decide this. We are in that regard, we are also living through this future together. So part of the use of future maps is, as you know, is to help us navigate the possible futures and leverage the opportunities and mitigate the risks. So that's exactly how we see this work, that it helps decision makers and entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, to play into desirable futures and against the unwanted futures. And this can only be done if we amplify the possibilities that are desirable by doing exactly what we see is necessary to be done. So doing it in this Protopia spirit that I was talking about, a prototype in the future we want to see, and then amplifying it and learning how to play into each other's interests. And I think that is unparalleled, because we never have been living through a system of global cooperation that uses a technology such as internet to connect learning communities all over the planet to solve challenges that are, again, unparalleled in the human history, the challenges that can risk the existence of our very species. So we are at a very unique time. At the same time, yes, we can find some parallels in the past, but I think none of those history books can tell us where to go exactly.
Thank you.
Would you want to go next, Nick?
Just checking if ladies had any questions, but otherwise I'm happy to jump into the next section. All right, well, hello everyone. My name is Nik Gрэхэм, and I don't feel like an outcast, being the only non-Russian name on this panel. I actually just consider myself human, as the same as everyone else. So, but I'm from the UK, and I am the co-founder of the Weaving Lab. And I've also recently joined another community of impact entrepreneurs that is Catalyst 2030, and they're focused on achieving the Sustainable Development Goals through collaboration. And most of the last 6 months or so, I've been working with Pavel and Kate on the Future Skills report, which I'll share now. Let me just see if I can get this on screen. Do we have liftoff? Yeah, all right, super. So I'll just walk you through some of the factors that are driving change, and then we'll get to the juicy bit, which is, and this is all just going to be a taster as well. So this is quite a big chunky report. And so to cover it in 10, 15 minutes is, you're only going to get little tasters. but the main essence is the skills that are required for us to thrive in the next 10 years, what is fundamental, and what are the implications for learning. So you can imagine yourself in 10 years down the road, and have we overcome these existential crises? How are we achieving the Sustainable Development Goals? And if you don't know what the Sustainable Development Goals are, I encourage you to go look them up right now. They're one of the first times that the world has aligned around a common direction. So I ask you, what do you feel is critical for us to achieve this brighter future? Let's see, do we have the next slide? Yes, I think we do. Okay, so yeah, this study was triggered by COVID, and it was sponsored by WorldSkills Russia. And so Kate will tell a better story about that, but we're very grateful for that partnership, that collaboration. And yeah, so COVID was the big trigger for this, but as Pavel said, it's not it's only accelerating some things that are already happening. What we did with this report, we employed the foresight methodology that Pavel mentioned, and I can get into that straight away actually. So in terms of the scope, you know, we all have our ideas and our biases and our thoughts, but we wanted to take the subjectivity out of it and make this objective. So we did that through reaching out to around 700 experts in various sectors across the world. And we started with some explorative sessions, workshops, around 17 of these, with about 300 participants. Oh, and the participants are their deans, their CEOs, their chairmen, their experts in their sector. So we have around 6,000 years of experience contributing to this study. Then out of these explorative sessions, we went into more refined quantitative surveys, and we had about 500 responses there across the 7 sectors that cover around 90% of global GDP and employment. And then the output of this was some maps of the future. And we were able to kind of identify when certain factors and when certain skills would become significant in each of the sectors. So here's an example for manufacturing and engineering, and you'll see time across the bottom. And we were able to cluster and synthesize the input into broad categories. And we're also able to, for each sector, rank which of the skills are most important, both now. So you see that on the left-hand side, the first column, and in 10 years' time, where the experts predict the most significant skills will be. Likewise, also for the drivers of change, the factors. And we also looked at some more meta trends and some scenarios. So there's lots of detail for you to get into. In terms of drivers of change, we, as I mentioned, looked at COVID, and that's the red blobs across the top. So the first row is 2020 right now, and the bottom row is 2030. And across the top, you'll see the different sectors, with the first column being the average across all sectors. So you can see very clearly, obviously, COVID has a huge impact right now with driving the remote revolution and working from home as the new norm. This was already occurring, but it's an accelerator. And likewise, stricter hygiene and biosecurity regulations. Interesting anomaly is the last category, the last sector, which is agriculture. By the way, the WorldSkills organization kind of maps onto the first 6 sectors, and agriculture is an addition because this is so critical as one of the key levers to our collective thriving. And interestingly, the only exception where COVID was not number one was in agriculture because of these critical resource shortages in soil degradation and biodiversity. And this is critical for all of us. But moving into 2030, we then see much more of the blue blobs, and that's the tech cluster. So things like robotics and cobotics and Internet of Things. So what do you see that's emerging through the coming decade? And is this decade the most pivotal in our history, in our collective history? So encourage you to say yes or no to that, or yeah, that's quite an interesting discussion. This image here shows a number of the planetary trends that we're seeing, both human on the right, left-hand side and physical on the right. So things like population growth, our energy consumption, our carbon footprint, our water use, fertilizer. We're seeing that we're at this kind of inflection point in time. The hockey stick is starting to point up in so many of these metrics, and planetary boundaries are approaching. And again, if you're not familiar with planetary boundaries, I encourage you to Google that right now, because that's, again, something that affects all of us. And then other things that are really on this hockey stick curve are things like our data consumption. So this coming decade really could be the most transformative of all, especially when you consider the step change in tech, things like self-learning machines and quantum computing. So this is at very early stages, but could have a huge impact. So through all of this analysis, we were synthesizing a number of different paradigm shifts through the coming decade. So we talked about tech already. So everything is programmable and hyper-connected. And we're seeing that cybersecurity becomes something that is a universal skill for all of us. And those who don't adopt these tech skills will start to define new social classes of tech literacy. So the haves and have-nots in the digital space as well. We also see emerging paradigms around creativity with this infusing all products, and tech is also leading us down this route, so that with the democratization of tools for everyone and anyone to be creative, so that then actually creativity and uniqueness become essential and value drivers, main value drivers through the decade. Other transformations include the experience-based economy and a shift away from linear systems to more complex and networked structures, distributed organizations, and ecosystems. So looking forward to hearing more from the panel on that. And the relocalization that Pavel was talking about, away from global supply chains and economies of scale to more independent and resilient local communities and bioregions like watersheds. So this is all in the context of a potentially declining industrial paradigm, the Industrial Revolution, the one-size-fits-all, the business as usual, extractive, capital-centered consumerism. And we're starting to see green shoots arising in the regenerative paradigm, which is much more life-centered and transformative at the level of society, planet, and also self, which is arguably the most important transformation we can make. So things like regenerative and circular economies, looking at long-term holistic outcomes, such as donut economics, which has been adopted here in Amsterdam. We synthesized through all of this, we saw the emergence of about 4 essential clusters of skills across all sectors. And there's some kind of fuzzy boundaries going on here, but yeah, on the left, you'll see the first block is the cognitive block, and that's of self. So how do we understand our place in a complex and uncertain world? And that's central here is adaptability, creative and critical thinking, and a favorite of mine is understanding biases. And another favorite of mine is the multidisciplinary systems thinker, and learning how to learn. Then in the yellow cluster, we see the socio-economic and cultural, or the skills of self. So how do we collaborate and facilitate and co-create together? And this is an example here is the rise of user-centric approaches, and also human and social emotional learning and storytelling. Then on the right, the tech skills that we talked about, including digital fitness, which is a more intentional kind of awareness of the impact of digital on our well-being and some kind of choice, rather than digital literacy, which is just knowing what it can do. It's actually being able to use it for you and for good, and for the good of you and your fellow humans and all life. This also covers this blue cluster. The tech cluster also covers the traditional maths and logic and reasoning skills, and some neo-crafts like 3D manufacturing and emerging technologies around AR, VR, and mixed reality. They're all slightly different nuances. And then last but definitely not least is the green and well-being cluster. So environmental practices and ethical decision-making, and connecting to the place that we live in. So just take a look outside, and how does this place, that your habitat, your environment, support you, and how do you support it, and how do you steward that? So getting into some detail now, here is a slide, an example of the rankings, and you see the sectors across the top, and the first column is the average of all key skills, and this is a snapshot of today, or 2020. And so interesting to see the yellow clusters are those social skills of connecting with others, and collaboration is the #1 skill across all sectors right now, followed by facilitation and co-creation, and then ethical practices and critical thinking. And I wonder how predominant those three are in curriculum, explicitly in metrics, in assessments, and even, yeah, I'd be interested to connect with Kate and how we can foster these as skills for the future for everyone to celebrate. An interesting anomaly, you can see the skills of self across the board. #1 is yellow, with the exception of construction, where it's nice to see some green popping up there, and that's recycling and retrofit design. So what do you think is most critical for the future of your work? Well, the picture shifts a little bit in 2030, and here we see a lot more blue, which is the tech skills. By the way, these skills don't replace the previous skills. They are the ones that rise the most in the coming decade, as predicted by 700 experts. So here we're seeing a lot more Internet of Things, the alternative and virtual mixed reality. Nice to see #3 on the cross-sectoral list is the regenerative skills, and #5 is this multidisciplinary cross-sectoral catalyst. We also looked at it through the perspective of education and learning. So what is critical? What's going to have the most impact? So adaptability came out top here, navigating change and thinking in terms of the future rather than that myopic short-term thinking. And environmental and sustainable practices And regenerative, just a quick note on regenerative, that's going beyond sustainability. Sustaining is keeping things the same, but we've done so much damage that we actually need to repair. It's like if you're drowning, you need to put in a lot of energy to get back up to the surface. So we do need to put in a lot of energy to get our global habitat back to where it needs to be. There's a lot of detail in here that I'm not covering, changes in curriculum, teaching methods, assessments, and frameworks. But so, yeah, I do encourage you to get into the details here. We'll talk about learning ecosystems in a sec, because we did come up with some stakeholder strategies, and there's many pages on this, so you're just getting a snippet here. So an example is to weave these multi-stakeholder collaborations, and that's another way that you can look at these learning ecosystems that are not just about learning, but the system itself learns as well. So you can look at it from both perspectives. And from a business perspective, alliances with education, where businesses present problems as student challenges, and encouraging the culture of learning through mentorship and apprenticeship, and empowering employees and learners and students to become teachers through peer-to-peer learning, and communicating how you align to the Sustainable Development Goals. And then finally, we're all learners, we're all on a lifelong learning journey. So how can you experiment with new tech, and how can you take responsibility for your own personal learning journey? Then finally, just wrapping up, some invitations. We do have the report that's ready. It's at Future Skills 2020. So please do head there to download it. And please do share it with makers and shapers of curriculum and policy. And we welcome collaborations on the next iterations. But I think we should probably have a discussion. We should certainly hear from the ladies on the panel first, because I think they're going to talk about some of the ways that we can apply these new skills and how we can learn these new capabilities. Thank you.
Yes, and I actually thank you very much, Nik. And I wanted to invite Kate Lошкарева to share some of that practical work that has been done with WorldSkills and is going to be done going forward in making future skills real, so to say, in the world. Kate.
Yeah, thank
welcome.
you, Pavel and Nik, and happy to see to Anastasia in the session. So basically, to save some time for the discussion, I just wanted to say probably 3 points. The first one is about the WorldSkills competition and the Future Skills competition, that usually when we hear the word the competition, we immediately imagine, again, something like Olympic Games or something like any type of kind of competitive approach. But in case of the WorldSkills and Future Skills implementation, first of all, we need to understand when we are applying the Future Skills practice on the competition. It's not only about demonstration of these examples of the Future Skills, but it's also about the standards update. And today we talk a lot with the Pavel and colleagues on the earlier session that educational innovators shouldn't be sometimes so, I don't know, a kind of, like they feel privileged to work with a small group of really talented people, and to do not actually feel necessity to include these practices into the mass training. But I think it's something that we will need to do in all of our communities, to include more of these practices into the regular standards. And the Future Skills is one of the tools to do so. Also, the Future Skills competition is always a mobilization, because especially in Russia, but not only Russia, for us it's hard to repeat some, kind of the more routine pattern again and again and again. But competition allows us to mobilize and to the whole communities come together, quickly discuss what are the most relevant and so on, and create the learning program for this and create a competition rules for this and so on. So it's a good tool for mobilization as well. It's also important from the perspective of assessment, because if we will include this criteria and the skills and this factor which Nik mentioned into the assessment criteria, it also will give a guidance for those who are, I would say, kind of less creative in their workplace, but they work in the educational field. So they need to have this framework, you know, like to what kind of skills and qualities to look at. And of course, from the perspective of benchmark, when we're creating something like Future Skills Zone, for instance, in Kazan in 2019, or we're going to create the whole specific bunch of future skills team challenges and the regular competition in St. Petersburg in 2023 EuroSkills competition. It's also give this benchmark from different countries perspective, different interdisciplinary international teams working together, and so on and so on. So in the end of the day, it gives practices itself. We also have like the universities in Russia who are implementing this future skills already, and we have some great discussion in the end of last year with the examples of let's say Moscow and St. Petersburg Polytechnics universities, Far East University, Russian physics institutes, and so on and so on. So a lot of educational practitioners are actually from both from VET and tertiary education already implementing this future skills practices, which is great. But also I was thinking that kind of we also need to, and we will implement more practices of kind of work from the perspective of reflection with the students and teachers and trainings, because sometimes these things feel like almost obvious, you know, like something like conflict resolution or empathy or collaboration skills and so on. But actually it's not if after the learning or after the training or after the competition, you do not organize the special discussion for the kids, for the students, for the adults, so asking like, okay, so what were your major conflicts, you know, in this conflict, how you deal with this, what kind of tools you use to resolve these conflicts, what was your biggest challenges from the perspective of dealing with your emotions, what kind of emotions have you kind of experienced, kind of how you deal with this, how you can make your working process greener. What kind of tools do you have? What kind of tools do you need to make your workflow greener and more kind of systemical, and so on and so on. So sometimes it's not really a huge amount of work. And I know that, for instance, my colleagues from the Kruzhok movement are already doing the great job together with our colleagues from Junior Skills, you know, helping kids and teenagers to reflect on their process of learning curve, but we definitely need to do more. And my final point would be about the actually our continuous work as a researchers to do not take some terms that we use kind of for granted, and to do not believe that we ourselves understand deeply what, for instance, conflict resolution means, because again, we use terms implying that everybody understands conflicts and conflict resolution the same way, but actually it's not. And the conflicts are very different by their roots. Sometimes it's just misunderstanding. Sometimes it's person to person. Sometimes it's a good type of conflicts, which leads to demonstrate the different views on the perspective of different objectives, or how different resources need to be used, and so on. So I think it's important to look deeper and to give clear guidance on which will help us to understand each other very kind of precise, and to avoid misunderstanding within each other and research and managers communities as well. So I think we need to continue this work and look deeper. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to emphasize here that I think what, Kate, you are sharing is that we are not only working with idea of the future. We are working with implementation of what we envision, and this will be, I think, the key topic in two following presentations from two Anastasias, Anastasia Morozova and then Anastasiya Starostинская. And I would like to welcome Anastasia Morozova to talk about what is National Technological Initiative in Russia and how the approach of Rapid Foresight and collective future making really works to catalyze technological change in Russia and beyond.
Yeah, thank you, Pavel, and Nik, thank you for your very useful report. I'm absolutely sure that we will be able to learn it, and our working group will be able to use it in order to shape the future. And this is something what I'm going to tell you how we do it and how we use Rapid Foresight methodology, which Pavel mentioned at the beginning, in real life, and how we form new technological markets using this methodology, and what kind of proofs what this methodology is actually working we do have right now. I guess this is one of the most important things, what we can actually show some results and demonstrate what we are not only talking, we already have a great projects which was created by community, by real companies, just because at some point of time they were participating in this big Foresight events, which Pavel mentioned already. Okay, but I should connect all of this with National Technological Initiative, but I will step back and start with another point, with innovations. When we think about future, when we think about shaping the future, we always think about something new technologies, new ways of doing things. And of course, the first word which came in our mind, it's innovations. Yeah, but how to grow innovations? How to create more new projects, startups, how to create new inventions. And first answer, which I'm absolutely sure will came in your mind, what, as usual, this is right people with right behavior, people who don't afraid to do mistake, people who curious, who have this learning attitude to each situation in their life. It's people who are ready to make mistakes and consider them as learnings. Of course, we need not just one person, not 2, not 10, not even 100. We need a lot of such people, especially when we think about countrywide initiative, in order to create those innovations. And this is the reason why we came to idea of community, and why Pavel mentioned several times, community is a key power of Rapid Foresight, but as well a key power of national technological initiatives. What is important here? Community, this is not just a set of people or group of people. Community is a group of people who are ready to do something together. Yeah, they're ready to invest their time in some joint actions, and they actually share the same value. The same value which our community is sharing, this is we can shape a future. We can imagine and after that create the future where we would like to live and our kids will live and be happy. And our community is actually focusing on new markets. What does it mean? We shape a future. We think what kind of business will be in this future, because needs of people will be changed. Behavior will be changed. It will be new culture, new technologies, a lot of influence from economy, from political situation. This is mean what completely new solution should appear on our radar and actually form new markets. And finally, what National Technological Initiative is it's a community with a goal to grow amount of and size of technological startups, but not any technological startups, but technological startups which will bring new technology to new markets. And those new markets we imagine based on this Rapid Foresight methodology. I hope what I connect all points in your mind, Rapid Foresight, community, and new markets. And now we can move a little bit forward and to see what kind of results this NTI community already have. What I have to mention definitely here, what of course NTI, it's a short name for National Technological Initiative, is supported by government. It was born by community, it was created by community. Community is still a main power of this initiative, but government support this initiative just because if you think about new market, if you think about shaping the future, you should think as well about changes which should be done in regulation. You should support new markets with new standards, with new laws. And in case you are not connected with government here, you most probably will lose a lot of time on creation of those new technological startups. And that's an important point here to mention. Finally, NTI, it's actually a set of different kind of communities. And you see here what from left side, we have business communities. This is entrepreneurs. This is different kind of people who have this idea in mind to create new business. They just need the right idea. But again, if we speak about technological startups, we need another community of universities, scientists, technological guys who can bring new technologies and combine them with business ideas. But that's not it. Of course, we need talents, especially if we think about the future. We need to combine all those three big group of people: entrepreneurs, scientists in universities or in any place where those scientists or technological guys is. And we need different kind of approaches to grow new talents, and WorldSkills, which Kate mentioned before, and a lot of other initiatives are here on our right side of this matrix, and is an essential part of NTI ecosystem. What you see on the bottom part, it's regional communities, means what we are fully digital and we are not locked with any location. This is very important for such big country as Russia, and especially it's important when we would like to go outside of Russia. We can work with any regional communities which exist and would like to join us. And one more, it's of course investment and venture communities, because at some point of time, any startup, any initiative will need funding. Those important components are actually represent the matrix, NTI matrix, and it's much more complicated. I understand what this slide is extremely complicated. I don't want to go into details. I just want to demonstrate you what we have a quite deep theory and practice which help us to drive this NTI as ecosystem. And this is just small part of like different kind of preparation work which was done in order to move this initiative forward. What I would like to mention today is actually, I would like to attract your attention to the left side of the matrix. And this is actually new markets, which I already mentioned several times, but you see what here we have names of those matrix, and I would like to show you several examples of it. And actually this is an answer on the question, is it working? How to demonstrate your results? Of course, this is projects, and actually we have tens and hundreds and thousands of projects, and I do not think what we will be able to go through all those projects and speak about them quite deep, but I put them in this presentation, and as soon as you will be able to download those presentations, you can go through it, you can read, and in case you will have any question about these projects, you can ask me. I have my contacts in the last slide of the presentation. But you see here what a lot of those projects are quite familiar for you, or not familiar, or you can expect what those projects will be here, like autonomous ship navigation or unmanned cars technology. But you should remember what all those projects they were started many years ago, when nobody was actually a big believer in such type of a project. And now we have like tens of them, like a platform which use AI for medical purposes or for a lot of different situations. And you see what we have, like seriously a lot of such projects. For example, one of them is some components for 6G, not 5G, already 6G. And all those projects are definitely proof for what Rapid Foresight methodology actually help a lot of people to create right shape of your future, be ready and form its shape. What we did last year, actually in 2020, we did another big Rapid Foresight session where thousands of people actually took part. And here you see 6 new markets which are forming right now. Some of them, again, they can look familiar for you, but each of them is actually new industry. And Pavel already mentioned what agriculture and food is one of the key components of the future. And here you see several segments which expert working group see as most interesting, most valuable for entrepreneurs, for startups in the future. And in a couple of words, everything here about personalization and about helping to provide food for everybody, despite of this huge growth of our population. EduNet, its market looks like or sounds like a market about education, and that's right. But this is some kind of another type of education, when it's about personal engagement and involvement in self-development, when education for any person or long life learning, it's just a game, yeah, just some fun, which actually help this person to for self-development, but as well increase the life quality, and services and products which will help to everybody, humans, to have such type of education. This is a part of EduNet. EcoNet, it's a market where human and nature should find symbiosis. It's a little bit broader than just ecology, but those markets are definitely, this market will definitely be one of them super big. You see here the amount of this market in 2035, and the segments which in this market again looks like most interesting for future business. And other markets where have the same like level of, they could sound familiar for you. Sportnet, what could be new in sport? But just imagine a new technology which came like virtual ecosystem or virtual world, when you can combine physical and virtual type of sport competition, when you can do events in digital universe. Just think about that, and you will see what sport will not sound familiar for you. It will be a completely new way of receiving fun and transforming your energy to something new. WearNet, probably this market will be more clear for you if you will think about fashion and about hybrid products which we can seen in the fashion industry in several years. Again, how you could combine virtual and physical world, and how your clothes can be different just because virtual will be added to something what you used to have. When you can push just one button and your look and feel will be completely different, just because in a virtual environment you can change it like in 1 second. And Another market which number 6 or final in my list today, it's a market which we call HomeNet. We had a lot of discussion how to call it actually, because where we will live, how the space where we will live will look like. This is not about smart city. This is not about building information modeling, which probably came in your mind. This is not about just digital twin or construction industry as itself, but just imagine drones, new type of vehicles, new type of transportation, new smart devices, new new way of producing food, and new way of producing any stuff which we have right now. For example, we probably will 3D print our boots or something what we need every day. All those things will influence how we live, what kind of environment we would like to have around us, and not only in our home, but as well in our city. And probably we will not live in a city. Probably it will be some kind of new type of surroundings which we will have around us. And HomeNet is actually a market which should take care about comfortable and safe life. How we will combine, or how we will live in a world where so many new technologies are coming, but we still would like to have our life safety and comfortable. And HomeNet is actually combining all the markets together. Those markets are working right now. We form a new working group. We form a community. You probably noticed what in each slide we have this graph with community growth for each of those markets. And we absolutely sure what next year in these markets, we will see absolutely new projects which will help us to increase our well-being from one side, but from another side, it's exactly what Pavel mentioned at the beginning. Those guys are not just waiting, they're shaping the future. And this is what our communities do in national technological initiatives. In case you would like to join us, because we are absolutely open to everybody who would like to go deep in each market to understand better what kind of project our companies have. You can reach out to me, and we definitely will find a way how to use Rapid Foresight methodology together and how to shape the future together.
Thank you very much, Anastasia. And I also would like to emphasize that there are these components that you already mentioned a number of times that they're really critical. So first one is working with future intentionally. And second one is going to the open source community where you can co-create the future with others. And I think that's a very logical connection to our last presenter today, who is another Anastasia Starostинskая, representing Kruzhok movement, creating something, let's say, from the other side, because here you are cultivating new communities, building up technologies intentionally. Anastasia is connecting communities that started doing this kind of change work from specific corner, but really working towards some more integrated paradigm. So maybe Anastasia, welcome.
Thank you, Pavel. Starting demonstrating. So you should be viewing my screen right now, right? Yeah, I will present it from another one focus, but well, it is, there are two focuses here, actually. The first one is what Pavel mentioned, is that we are trying to connect all those communities of practices from different countries and from different spheres. And another one is about the Kruzhok movement that I personally represent, and that is connected with National Technological Initiative. And this is the movement of mixed children-adult communities. So we call these communities Kruzhok, which means circle in English. And we refer to famous circles that we see in the past, the circles of engineers such as Zhukovsky circle, or philosophical circles too there. And we believe that in such kruzhoks, children can really create practices of the future. They can work with the future. And so we also want to connect all those different adult communities that we see nowadays with this children and mixed children adult communities, and get a great ecosystem of communities of practices. Well, first of all, I would refer to the term of practices of the future. So we were acquainted with the term Protopia that Pavel presented today, but well, in Russian we don't have such such comparison with dystopia and utopia, and we decided that practices of the future would be what in Russian language will be very nice, and that will help to shape the image of the future and what you really can do. And as we understand, practices of the future is well, a way when you personally stop just wait for the future, just wait what it will be, and will it be good or will it be bad for you, and start to shape your own position. So first of all, to imagine possible variants and see all those predictions that we see in the world, then choose the desired ones and understand which of those suggestions and scenarios are desirable for you and which are not desirable, and then start to do something today in order to get into that desirable one, and to prototype the part of that desirable future today. So because the future doesn't really exist, the present is what exists, and the future is what we do today actually, and that's how we will get to one or another version of the tomorrow. And well, if we go back to the term, so we can understand the practice of the future, that this is a system level innovation, a new practice of thinking, acting, and being aimed at implementing new values and a new worldview. So you are creating a practice of the future, and you want it to be spread widely and spread it to the future. So that's why you also need younger generations, and it can't be really practiced without the youth. And then those practices of the future, the new practices, they can substitute the imperfect practices of today. Well, for example, how it happened. We believe that technology enthusiasts, they refer to some problems of the present or to some images of the future, and they shape their image of the future. For example, that in the future, the cities will be not only smart, but also eco-friendly, and people will live not atomized and not in just nuclear families with no connections with their neighbors, but in a community of those who live in one house, and they will have, for example, eco farms on inside of this house, and that they share. Or another variant about some robotic human systems. For example, we have a vision of what we call centaurus. So this is a mythological creature with the head of a human and the body of a horse. And today we can imagine that, well, this body of a horse is, for example, a robotic body. So the robot can empower a human, but still a human being should be the head of this system, and that's how it works. And this is also, for example, a very important image when the robot doesn't stand for people, doesn't just go forward, and there are no people in this system anymore, but there is some kind of a co-evolution of robots and people. And as we do believe that krужоks can be the source of practices of the future, because we can't go to the future without young people that we are working with in krужоks, and that this is the atmosphere of enthusiasts. So because it's really difficult to invent, to create some practice of the future, because you need to broaden your horizons and just to step out of the system of the rules. And so you need some like-minded people around you in order to do it. And we decided to make a global map of the practices of the future that can help both those krужоks in order to choose their way to the future, to understand what are the problems, what are the urgent problems and topics, and what is being made today. So what kind of projects they can launch. And not only launch for today, because this is actually a very interesting challenge for us, because we are working with technology enthusiasts and with children, and when they think about the future, they usually are very technology optimistic, and they don't really think about consequences for 10 or 50 years forward. But their technological projects, they will shape the future and this society 50 years forward. And that's why it's really important just to start to think about it with them and to talk with them. And so we created this global map, and we chose just one second, I don't see my presentation because of the chat here. So we created the map, which can work as a navigator for anyone who's interested among problems of the modern world, existing communities that are moving towards the future, and the practices themselves. And we have 4 thematic archipelagos there, where we put the precise description of the practices. And so the website itself has 4 main parts. So first of all, is this map. It's an interactive map where you can swim with the ship and just move into all of those archipelagos and choose your own one. And then in each archipelago, you can read about the problems and the precise description of each practice. And there are a lot of links inside there, so you can go and scrutinize yourself. There is also a cool map of communities of the practices of the future to help enthusiasts to find the allies, and additional materials. Well, unfortunately for now, the additional materials are only in Russian, but we hope that we'll manage to make the sector larger. And the last point is that the practices that we put on this map, we did it after a series of interviews with engineers, entrepreneurs, and so on. And we tried to choose those who are leading to the desirable future for us. So those who meet core values for us. And so the core values are that the human is thriving in the future, the systems are fair, and they help the human to thrive and help the planet to be alive. And all those 3 core values are together, and that's how we have the process of coevolution of human, technology, and nature, and that is really important for us. So that's how we are talking with our children in Sci-Fi Club and in krужок. So we started a lab where we tried with several krужоks to start talking about this map, and they used it and they tried to project their own practices of the future. And so we hope that we will move forward, and we will move forward not only with krужоks but also with adult communities all over the world. And so we're going to make the map bigger, and then to start also our own prototypes in different regions and in different Kuroks. So.
Thank you very much, Anastasia. I know we have a lot of information to share. We have already the ending minutes of our session. Thank you, everyone. My invitation to all of us and all of those who is listening to this session is actually not to see it as just a series of presentation, but see it, consider this as a series of opportunities. And for example, Nik, you worked with us on future skills, but now you're stepping into this role where you are working on building up a global alliance of people on sustainable development goals. And of course, all of these lines of work that have been presented today are opportunities to be connected and integrated that can, on one hand, bring approach of sustainable development goals into Russia, but also offer some solutions for the world and collaborate with the entrepreneurs around the world, social entrepreneurs and leaders, to really make it happen. And so, I think let's find ways to amplify each other across the board we have here and across the border, so to say.
Absolutely, yeah. That's I think we all believe in that, the interconnectedness of everything. So yeah, let's do this.
Yes. So thank you very much, guys, for ladies and gentlemen, for presenting today, being here with us. I know we could have hoped for a more interactive session, but we also wanted to share so much with you that probably let's find opportunities to explore each of these projects further on and find ways to make it real on a global scale, not only within Russia. We do believe that the future is ours to make. It's actually depending on us, but not individually, not from egoistic standpoint, but from collective, communal, and serving standpoint, where we can together serve these greater values of changing civilization. Thank you. And I think the idea of this three components that Anastasia Starostинskая indicated in the end, humans, technology, and nature working in harmony, is the big dream that we can all share.
Thank you,
Love
Pavel.
it. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Enjoy your future.
Bye. Thank you.